I'm here with the beautiful Kristin Cronic for the Artist Success interview series. I asked her here because I have seen a behind the scenes look in her business, and I know that she is where every one of you want to be, even though she's always wanting to grow even more and even more. That's just how this world works, right? So she made this beautiful, beautiful piece behind me where she was talking about connections in entrepreneurship. That resonated so much with me because you guys know I love my relationships, I love my connections, and I love to see where they go, even when you don't know where they're going to go. So she is a artist, creative entrepreneur, designer. She's got the whole spectrum going for her, both in her professional and personal life. Hi, Kristin.
Hi, thank you for having me.
Of course, I'm so happy to have you. And you are expecting. When are you expecting?
I am 33 weeks pregnant right now with our third and probably our last.
Thanks so much for taking the time, because I know that it's a busy time in your life. It's almost Christmas. You're amazing for being here. So I asked Kristin before this call started if she would be willing to share her numbers. She is super organized. She's like, yeah, and you want me to show a breakdown and like kind of tell you what's up in my business? So whatever you want to share or feel comfortable sharing would be fantastic. And then I'll ask you a couple of questions to see how we got there in the first place.
Sure. Yeah, I think it's important to be transparent because it helps other people make decisions and have goals and have realistic expectations about all this stuff. I'm all about that.
So you have a couple of different facets to your art. You have kind of gone a couple of different directions. Multi-passionate. I love multi-passionate. In your past life, you were a naval officer and you've done some art in that direction. You've done, like behind you, you've got trees and nature, you've got some fiber, and you've kind of separated it out into different businesses in the past.
Yes, I initially just started it as a practice, just a fine art with everyone else. You just start making stuff. I did separate the military inspired work because I realized that had an identity of its own. I don't normally recommend doing that, but this in particular felt separate. Separating it was, I think, the best thing I did because it gave it space to become its own thing. However, I'm still the only person managing both. In that sense, it's not ideal, but it basically started as a project that I promised myself I would do back in 2007 when I was a freshman at the U.S. Naval Academy. I was really inspired by a particular photographer's work who had really helped me like mentally prepare for that experience. And I just that was kind of my driver for learning how to paint. Obviously, I didn't go to art school. I went to military school. So learning how to paint and kind of nooks and crannies of that life was so I could tell the story. So I started it in 2018. And I have one series of paintings left before I'm like, I did what I set out to do. But with that entity, it became so much more. I think while I'm telling this story, I'm unpacking my own experience there, which is its own thing too. Also, I just feel like sometimes the military needs to lighten up. And so I do a lot of really loose and whimsical designing. I have fabric that there's a lot of crafting there. So I made cute fabric that way you can not so stiff, and it's turned into product lines. I wholesale a little bit. So it kind of just became this thing, and it's this community. I made a paint kit that we did as a group throughout 2020 to make everyone happy because everyone was sad in 2020. That's basically what happened. But then that's still this isolated, they do intertwine, and I'm starting to see the connections actually, which is kind of cool. But aesthetically, they're very different. And so I ended up separating that out so that way it would give me some space to pursue the more essentialism of what my work is about in other ways. That's why I have my fine art, where I just have a fine art practice, but then also mama needs to make money. Sometimes I'm very experimental and I'm not consistent. I have found different ways to make more predictable revenue where it gives me space to experiment, but I really am trying to minimize those as I move forward and lean into the work that really excites me. That's kind of how I've navigated this, and that's kind of where I'm at right now.
So when you break it down, I know I forgot to mention mentioned you also do wedding paint, like live wedding painting.
Mhm.
So you've got the work that you are exploring for navigating through that part of your life. You've got the more consistent wedding painting type stuff. You've got your fine art experimental. How do they break down in terms of income for you?
I have specific numbers.
Percentages are so
I can
great.
give you numbers. I think that's really helpful. I have been at or close to six figures 3 years in a row now. So I just crossed it this year. It was a little bit less than last year, but that's fine. They're almost, I have numbers in front of me. This year, they're almost 50-50 military and my fine art, which is really cool. Last year, it was probably 70-30 difference. That's like what I really wanted to start growing my other side. So I have. Right now I'm right at six figures. So it's about 50 grand each. That's where I have diversified a lot. So live painting this year has brought in the most revenue, which is about $20,000, maybe a little bit more. It was a very busy fall. It was a very sparse before fall because it was still pandemic. Everyone planned their weddings for this fall and then into next year. I'll be sitting out a lot of next year because of the baby. So such is life, but it's fine. That was one of the most stable things. I can tell you live painting was a game changer for me because in this space of exploration and kind of learning more about myself as an artist, I needed to look at a calendar and be like, okay, am I going to get paid? Am I going to eat? And this was this way to look at it. I'm like, wow, look, I have a contract. I have a payment plan. I will be getting paid these weeks or these months and I'm good. It kind of gave me the freedom to do these other things, work on my MFA. I designed the live painting in a way that like they don't take over my life during the week, which is good. I mean, there's still a lot of energy, but I put a lot of boundaries around them. There's live painting. Originals this year add up to about $15,000 in sales. And this is really what I'd like to grow in my fine art later. That's split between both because the military one's winding down at this point. In our conversation that we've had, you had asked me, why are you holding back? Like after we talked for like hours, you're like, at the end of it, like, why are you holding back? And all this one thing that means a lot to you. And I've been thinking, I'm not even answering your question. I'm just going to keep going.
No, you are. I like it. Keep going.
Maybe I should table that one for a minute later. Should I table that part? Okay, I'll table it. So right now we're about 15 grand for the year in originals. In prints total, like both combined, military and my regular, it's also about 15 grand, maybe 14 grand in prints. Those are important to me because I want my work to be accessible. Most of the art I own are in prints, and so I totally respect that. I mentioned a little bit of wholesale. I brought in about 5 grand in revenue in wholesale, which is not profit, that's revenue. Then I have a lot of special projects. So fabric, I just did some fun fabric collections on the side. That's brought me about 1,500 this year. Then like retail and like products like that has been 1,500. I have a special project category. That's where I made in my military work, I made a journal that was like explicitly towards this concept of reflection on your stories. I have like about 3K in teaching. And then I also do house portraits for realtors. That was the very first thing I ever made money on. And it's this lovely network. I don't advertise them at all. It's just a couple people I trust. And it ends up being about $5,000 to $8,000 a year total. They're easy, they're fun, and they're no pressure. Then another larger number that I'm trying to reduce are commissions. This year, we're at about $13,000 in commissions. Last year was like 19,000. So we are reducing.
Yes, we're going the right direction. Not for everybody, for you.
Not for me. They were really good in having consistent income starting out. And I don't think that there's anything wrong with them. They're emotionally draining for me. So I would love to become known for my voice, not for what everyone else wants from me. Right. That's where I'm at now with this.
So all that being said, that was a lot of things that you do. Like
yes.
Crazy amounts of a lot. I'm blown away by the fact that you can manage all that.
Not well.
I respect you so much. But how many hours would you say you average a week juggling all of that?
Now, okay, I don't want to talk about 2019 and 2020. When I first started, 2018 to 2020, I was in hustle mode and there were no boundaries. I worked from home. I had my baby at home. I don't know. I didn't track my time then, because I was just trying to do everything. I was scattering every seed possible, as you can tell. Like some of these things are still here. This year, my goal was to not work nights and weekends. I did a little bit, just a little bit, like handful of times. And I also am working in my school, so that doesn't really count. School is sometimes just what happens. On average, I probably work 4 to 6 hours a day, Monday through Friday. Now that's it.
Yeah.
I did that I started it by working out. I used to work out, wake up early and work out. I was like, nope, I want to work out after my kids go to school. They're in daycare. That was his limit of 3 to 4 days a week. I have an hour and a half at the gym. So I wasn't starting my day until 10. I was like, okay, let's see what happens if I start that and then stop doing things at night. Here we are now. It's focusing on the right things, which I'm still working on.
We're not getting to the questions yet, but I keep having other questions. I'm just gonna go with it. Do you find that by giving yourself that space and choosing to have more boundaries, I guess is a better word, and more space for yourself, do you find that it's working just as well as it was before when you were as scattered? Or do you feel like sometimes you need to go back to that to be able to get everything done?
I'm trying to never go back to that. It wasn't healthy for me. It's not good for my marriage and my children to see me like that. No, I never want to do that again. Like, my goal is to really work on prioritizing what's the most important. That way, if I don't get to the rest, I don't get to the rest, and that's fine.
Right.
And, but there does need to be some structure in place, because sometimes we do need to make money. Making sure I fold in some of those commitments that I know already work that I can tolerate. Like, commissions kind of are what they are. I'm slowly phasing those out. What are other ways that I can do when there's some things I've taken to more intentionally do that this year?
Yeah. And one of my beliefs, and I just wanted to see if you were along this same line as well, before I said it, is that if you give yourself that time, like, I need to work out, I'm going to go do that. I'm going to do that first thing. That means I have less time to do other things. But it's all the things anyway are still going to get done because I'm going to prioritize them, and it's going to be okay. You still hit 6 figures this year.
I did.
I know you showed your numbers before, and it's just slightly less, but the fact that you have given yourself so much more space and still have almost the same income, I find incredible and a huge, huge win for you.
I agree. I'm so pleased that it was able to happen. I wasn't going for it this year. And there was so many times this year where I ended up saying no. It's just that reminder that saying yes to something means saying no to something else. Most of the time it was my family, and that's not okay. It was kind of, if I kind of make it work when the baby was real little, I could just sacrifice my health. Now it's like my kids notice, and that's not okay anymore. It was never okay. It's like I had some cool opportunities in the military to do some stuff that would have been like within my range of things to do. For sure, they weren't bad projects. They were things I kind of wanted to do. And in one in particular, it was like we had talked earlier in the year. I hadn't really heard from her, but I honestly was really busy. I was doing what I needed to do, and I wasn't going to reach out. I was like, if she wants it, she wants it. She ended up reaching out with basically, it would have given me 1 week to get everything together. And I was just at a week I couldn't do it. I told her, I'm sorry. We talked a month ago, then maybe, but not now. I had to drop it. And it was okay. It wasn't the end of the world.
But it felt like it might be.
It was hard, but I was like, again, like, I am picturing that late night and my attitude the next day and my resentment. I'm like, it's not worth it. It's just not worth it anymore to keep burning both ends of the candle.
Okay, because I feel like we're getting to some good stuff here. What is the biggest mindset shift that you had to make? Let me see how I want to ask this. I'm going to say from last year to now. What's the biggest mindset shift you had to make? I'm changing the question on you, sorry.
Okay.
To go from running ragged to about 5 hours a day without decreasing your income?
No, that's a good question. In one sense, defining enough would be one. Like defining what's enough. That's a huge one. It's humbling because I have the potential to make so much more money in the real world. There's a lot easier ways to make money even as an artist, but I chose this, and that's its own story too. It's important to me. And I think that art brings value to the world that isn't always respected in the monetary culture, capitalist culture we live in. Honoring that and being okay with not comparing those numbers, if that makes sense. That's probably kind of a weird thing to say because I'm very like also driven. I like that. Recognizing, giving myself the space, which this is kind of something I think I do pretty well, but I have to take a step back. Like, giving myself the space regularly, like daily, weekly, monthly, yearly, to think and reflect on my priorities and what worked and what didn't work. We had just talked last month because I was like, I need someone else to talk with me about this. That's why we connected. Because I was like, I'm in my head too much right now. That's a practice that I think has been very helpful in being unafraid to make big changes, but make those changes wisely. You can't just stop what you're doing and expect something else to fill in this place. You have to kind of integrate something else in. Maybe that's it. It's just being okay with, recognizing what the priorities are in your life and not really caring about what someone else thinks about it.
That sounds so simple. Just recognize your priorities.
It's hard.
But it's
really
so hard for so many people. So how did you do that?
Well, at the end of 2020, at the end of 2019, I was feeling burnout. You know, my husband is really good at communicating boundaries to me. Something's got to change, Kristin. And I had taken on a really large commission. It was my first 5-figure commission. That number had put my savings account to a place where I pay myself a regular salary and it's defined. That finally had put me in a place where I could afford 3 months of not working. Not that I wouldn't work, but it was like, oh, there's the space to breathe. I didn't have to quite spin my wheels so much. So intentionally making that savings plan was great. Then insert the pandemic. All of a sudden, like the trajectory I was on to finally have some space, I kind of reverted back to old ways because I kind of needed to. Looking back, did I need to? Probably not. So end of 2020, I was like, I'm here again. I'm done hustling. And again, same conversation, same boundaries, same reflection time was like, something's got to change. This isn't healthy. And I recognized it too. That's kind of where it started, and just taking small steps, recognizing what's the first thing I need to do. I need to go to the gym. I get very distracted when I work out at home. I hate waking up early to work out. Let's try that first and then see if we can make this work just 2 days a week. Did I answer the question? What was the question? I kind of went off.
You did. I think so. So you recognize what you need. You make a small choice to support that, and you implement it into your life. That's kind of what I heard. Yeah.
And doing it as honorably as possible. Like, again, you can't just sometimes drop what's working if you don't like it. Sometimes maybe phase it out is a good way to do it.
Yeah. Maybe give yourself a timeline. Like, you got 3 months to get rid of this and replace it with something else. The pace I was on in 2020 was frantic. Especially with the military work, that was one thing where I'm like, my goal this year, instead of 4 collections of paintings, was 1 collection of painting for the military work. That gave me the space to do other things. And now I'm like, this took me basically an extra 1.5 years longer than I wanted it to, but it's fine. No one got hurt. Like, the work is still there. I will work on the last one probably this summer. And then I'll be like, I did it. And I did it in 4 years instead of 2. And I'm like, but that's okay. I did it. And that's completely fine. The world did not expect or was not disappointed. And if they were, who cares? You know, I felt more intentional to just slow down a little bit. You also were okay with choosing again. Like, you set your own timeline, but then it just wasn't there in your life. It wasn't fitting in. But you didn't give up on it. You kept choosing it, but you just chose ways to make it work.
For sure.
Yeah. Cool.
Yeah.
Okay. My next question. What one practical step have you taken in your business that has moved you forward the fastest? I feel like you are uniquely positioned to answer this question because you are a person who reflects on what's working. So I'm curious to hear your answer.
Okay. Move me forward the fastest. I feel like there's 2 steps. There's 2 things to that.
Okay. 2.
Sorry, there's like weird shadows on my face. There we go. The first is I have always had a really good handle on the numbers and the money. I didn't pay myself for probably the first 15 months of doing this. And then when I did, I set a salary that I felt comfortable that I could achieve. It was very small, and it's gone up from there. I'm actually going down. I think I mentioned that to you. right now, but it's because I'm entering another phase of change and I would rather get paid less and still be in business than be growing at a time where I really want to be with my baby. So one of them is that my degree is in engineering, and the military is a ton of spreadsheets. And so it's just a natural thing for me to keep track of stuff. Just really knowing what numbers are and kind of setting a salary that I can live with, being okay with that, and also setting out space for the important part of a practice, which is experimentation for me as an artist. I want to make sure that I'm always playing, and that's like a weekly part of my practice. So that's the first. And I think there's 1,000 different ways of doing that. I've changed mine over the years, whatever worked, but it's been a business, it's been a profit business since I started. That's great. And the other one, in terms of growing the fastest, I would say everyone's scared. Everyone is scared of rejection, but to go for it anyways, putting things out there before you're ready, saying yes to things within reason, me finding things that I didn't really intend on doing, saying yes to things and saying yes to opportunities, and kind of just being brave and recognizing that like this whole thing is interconnected, like all these opportunities to just go out there and try and to meet somebody is so important. Yes. You just never know. You just never know. The first coffee shop show I did, I went into labor that day. So
wow.
It was a good one. And, it's not like I sold a ton of pieces. I was up for 3 months. But that's what actually led to wedding painting. Like someone saw that, said, you'd be good at this. Can you do my wedding? Here we are. And I still sell prints from people who found me there. That led to my first real show and a good venue. And then that led to the gallery I'm in now. You just never know where these things are going to take you. Also for me, I don't look it on the internet. I don't sell out online collections at all. I sell some. I'm not that model of, oh my gosh, if you wouldn't know that I have a 6-figure studio practice, but I do. That's because it's just like leaning into what does work. And if like the local community is great, then do that. I personally love the local community. COVID made things hard. Just go out there and do it and don't overthink it too much. Everyone's scared. And if anything, that's almost a rite of passage. Learning how to be confident in your work in the face of people's opinions. Because like there's always gonna be someone that has something to say that's not nice. Whatever. It's not for them, it's for you. And that's important. just to like use your voice in the world. Mm-hmm. That's probably it.
I had something I wanted to say, and then you said something about people are not always going to be nice. My mind immediately went to an email that I got. People are mean sometimes, but it's okay. You have to share who you are, put yourself out there.
Support group where you share the bad. I've had 2 this week, and I was like, it'd be good to share the bad stuff. You get in your head. It can ruin. It can derail you if you let it.
It's like, why do people feel the need to do that? I don't understand. But I remember now what I wanted to point out from what you said. You said, I don't sell out my online collections, and people might not think I'm successful from the outside. I want to point out how important that is for everyone to grab onto and really like shove that down into your heart and grab onto it, because it's not about the perception. A lot of times we get stuck in our head about the perception, but Kristin has been running a successful 6-figure artist business for the past 3 years. So who cares what people think about what her business looks like?
For sure. I mean, actually, if you want to go with numbers, because the original art is the work that I labeled as the work I did from the honest place, right? Like my curiosity. So that in terms of numbers this year, that's $15,000. That's 15% of what I made this year. I do want to increase that percentage, but that's more for me than for anybody else. It's more, I just would like to make a little bit more money on the things that I feel like is my voice. And that's fine. I'm not ashamed of, well, I have struggled with shame, but I'm learning to be like, whatever. It's like, but how much experimentation did I get to do? I'm working on my master's. There's a lot up there. I just found out I'm ADHD too. So that it explains a lot. 15% of my income is the stuff that I really feel like proud, not proud of, but this is my voice.
Comes your soul space. Also, I believe with all my heart that you are learning boundaries and prioritizing yourself. And the more that you do that, the more income you're going to make from those things. believing that you can. Because when you are like, well, this feels safe and this feels safe and this feels safe, and you say yes to all those, there's not enough space for this one. So that's shifting for you.
Saying yes to one thing is no to something else. My experiment, you challenged me to do this, and I've been reflecting on it a lot, is like to act on these ideas and to just go ahead and put them out there quicker and more often. I'm like, but that does mean I have to do less of this other stuff. If I'm spending all of my effort on commissions, then I'm not having time to do this stuff. And it feels really good. It's scary because what if they don't like it? I love to play in the studio, and these things need to be seen. They don't need to exist in this drawer. I think these would be great. And so I'm going for it. We'll see what happens.
I'm throwing your own advice back at you. You said there were 2 things you did to grow the fastest. And one of them was being scared and doing it anyway.
Yep. You're right. You're right. And I'm terrified because this feels personal.
I know. It's the scary it's the scary stuff that makes the difference.
Mm-hmm.
All right.
I was actually reflecting on that though. My first real show, I did these giant paintings of trees, and I was like, can I say this? I was balls to the wall. I like no holds. I was distributing my cards to all the local businesses in the area and putting things on windows without asking, and like all this stuff. Honestly, the outcome to my expectation was not what I wanted. I felt like it just wasn't what I had pictured in terms of like turnout. I was the only person doing anything. Like the venue didn't really do a whole lot of promoting. I think that actually caused some damage. I think I've actually been hiding in a way ever since, because it was like that hurt so much. Part of it was like, was my expectation too high given that was my very first show? Probably. I was like, just recognizing that it was something that hurt, even though it was still great. I still sold a few pieces, which is amazing. I was like, that was recognizing that did cause some pain. I'm like, okay, it's 2022. That was 3 years ago. It's time to get yourself out there again and not stop hiding things that you know work.
One of the things I like to tell my clients is to not have expectations. By that, I don't mean don't hope or don't have goals or any of that kind of thing, but I talk a lot about magic in my group. If you have this has to happen, then you lose out on all of these other things. Like earlier, we were talking about how this opportunity leads to that opportunity leads to that opportunity. Honestly, you probably got or could have gotten a lot more out of that than you realized.
Probably.
But you didn't see it because you were looking here and you didn't have the peripheral vision on. So next time you do it, you're looking for your next opportunity. It's not just about sales. Sales are important, of course, but a lot of times the sales will come after, when you follow up with those relationships that you met. I mean, there's so many beautiful things that can happen, or it leads to a podcast interview, which leads to this, which leads to that. That's what we're looking for.
For sure.
Yeah.
It's beautiful.
I know. I love it so much. Okay. I get all excited about that stuff. What advice do you have for someone who isn't sure they have what it takes to get to the next level? Let's define next level. Next level being for you, let's say, having more space in your life, but still getting what you need.
It's almost kind of the same thing I was saying. It's just do it. Stop thinking and just do it wisely. You know, I think there are some practical tips of standardizing some things. That way you're not buying 15 different sizes of canvases. You're just buying 2. Very practical. There's that.
There's such small, easy tweaks though.
Yeah, they're really easy. They're really easy. Understanding that this is a process that everybody feels. I don't think I ever expected to be where I was, and I still feel this way. I still feel like insecure and scared, and I think that's just the nature of being an artist and an entrepreneur. Believing in yourself that it will be okay. The worst thing in the world is not failure. It's probably not trying at all. Truly believing that whatever needs to come out is valuable to the world. That thing doesn't have to change the world. There's amazing work out there that's addressing big issues, but joy is one too. That's what it is. I don't know. I'm not sure if I'm answering this question, but I'm not even sure if I'm answering. It's so like, I'm usually like, I was in the Navy, it's just your action plan, but you have to believe in your own vision and your own voice before anything else. From there, trust that you have the creativity and the strength to execute it. Being in the pandemic taught me that we can figure this out. We'll make this work. It may not look like we expected. It might be kind of some stressful nights at first, but we'll figure this out. It's okay. Like, we're creative people. Artists are creative people. And you can apply that to your business too.
Please, please, please apply that to your business. Don't get stuck in, well, this is how this person does it, so this is how I have to do it. If anything, go back and listen to all of these interviews. Not a single dang one of them are anything.
If there's one thing I could tell myself
very incorrect
years ago, it's to stop comparing and looking at what other people are doing and measuring that as success. You don't know. Everyone has a unique set of like circumstances that will make it work for them or not work for them. You know, I mean, for me, it's like I was just telling my husband the other day, I'm like, I had this background in the military and I was able to so intimately touch on this nerve with them. I love that community because I understand them so well. When I got out of the military and tried to have work outside of that, no one knew who I was because I was in this world for such a long time. It was both a privilege and something I have to overcome at the same time. But still a privilege. We all have these little privileges that can like, they're unique to us, like this unique set of people that we know and things that we can say.
It's so easy to say, well, she was able to do it because she had blah, 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 blah.
Yeah.
But you've got to just got to look around you. I think most, if not everyone, will say, well, yeah, but about what they already have. But it's about learning to use that, not to your advantage. That sounds like opportunistic, but using it to help boost you up.
I think also redefining what that goal is. For a long time, me and every other artist wanted to be licensed by Anthropologie. I still would love that because I just love the story. It was more of this wicket that I assumed I needed to have than about something else. It was kind of like, how could you apply that in something that might be more backdoor, like inachievable to me? Honestly, I went around that a lot and I was like, I don't really want to dive into that right now. I took some time and learned about licensing. That's a lot. It's a lot. I would love to one day, but not right now. But then another, as a fine artist, like the museum show is like this big thing. Normally that's something that would take, I don't know how you get those. But with my military work, this is, again, something so specific and so intimate. I did a cold call with our Naval Academy Museum. And they called me back the next day and were like, we'll schedule a show. I only have been working artist for 3 years and I already have a museum show through this other format. And then that's leading to something new in the future, which is super cool. I'm not getting paid for that, but it's like still so cool to have that experience. You probably have things like that you could do that completely is achievable and it is right in your back pocket. I mean, maybe not my specific circumstances, but like everyone's got something that can.
I call that the easy button.
Yeah.
Yes. You keep having so many light bulbs that I want to be like, oh, and don't come back to it in a minute, maybe. Anyway, I love everything you're saying. So good. Thank you. Thank you for sharing.
You're welcome. Thank you for sharing your perspectives. I've been on your email list for a while and followed social media, and we finally had worked together. That came after a long time of just exploring other things. And, I've come to the conclusion, I really like what she's saying. It really makes sense to me. And your perspective is really helpful. I think it's necessary in this community, in this space, because art is different than business. It's like there's creativity, there's consistency, there's discipline. But then sometimes it's emotional and it's personal and it feels different than a commodity. It's just, there's a tension here that I kind of love living in sometimes. Sometimes I don't. We need these voices to help share because it's helpful. I don't want people feeling inadequate or that their voice isn't valid because they're not selling. That's something you can work on and you can grow, but keep making. It's really important.
So important.
Mhm.
Art is, I don't know how it ever became a part of society or our society. I don't think this has ever been true of the entire rest of this world, but in our society, somehow we have started to devalue it. That makes me
Mhm.
so sad.
Mhm.
I think the more that we kind of stand our ground about how it is valuable and how it can change perspectives and lives and bring joy and just the simple things,
For sure.
it's going to make the difference.
My therapist used a really great example of like science and spirituality. It's like, how do you weigh the two? They're very different. If I have cancer, I'm probably going to kind of lean towards science with the side of spirituality. I want to talk to a doctor, but if I'm really contemplating the meaning of life, then science, who cares? I'm going to lean into the spirituality part of things. I love that example. They're different buckets and they're definitely valued differently in society. That's part of, I think, understanding our roles as artists. We are business people, but we're also artists. And I think there's finding that marriage and how we incorporate that into our practice and our businesses, I think is really important.
Yeah. And honestly, I completely understand the separation between art and business, but in my mind, I think they're the same. Like you said, a commodity in business, you have to use your creativity, your inspiration, your connections, your relationships, your all the things to make that work. And it's the same thing over here. It's just, I think maybe that there's a little bit more ego involved in this side,
Probably.
which makes it harder to get over those humps and push and persevere, but you must.
That's very true. I think that's a really great word, the ego. And maybe one solution to that is to finding a sales channel that works. We've talked about that. I don't necessarily love social media, but it's like the gallery, if it can kind of handle some of that for me, I have deemed that commission cut very worth it,
Mm-hmm. There's no wrong channel.
Mm-hmm.
That's the other thing. It's all about looking at your unique skills, opportunities, desires, and putting them together. It's about creative thinking, putting them together to form your thing. Your thing is different than that thing or that thing or that thing or that thing or that.
I wish I could carry you in my pocket and listen to you. These interviews have been great because I've been following along with them too. And like everyone I've taken new things from.
Yes. And I want to apologize for the trippy internet. We got snow problems at my house today. So apologies to everybody. Kristin, tell us where we can find you.
My Instagram, it's the social media I do use. I check it every day. I'm not posting every day, but it's Kristin Ray Cronic, Kristin with two I's. What? It's Kristin RAE and my last name CRONIC. My husband's going to be mortified. I just did that on a video.
I love it.
Then my website's kristincronic.com, and my military stuff is called Easel on Stribling. I love this body of work. I love this community. So if you ever just want to follow along and see what's going on with this very tight knit community, it's the same website and email or website and Instagram. So they're great.
And if someone wants to get the best of the best from you, Instagram, email, blog, like where do you want them to go?
Well, I am starting a blog to your recommendation. I actually had started a while back. I like the long form writing, and also with ADHD, I like bounce. But unlike Instagram, where there's a timestamp and it throws off your grid, I could blog about whatever topic I'm feeling like that day. I can organize it my way. So the blog is something that I feel like I'm able to express myself much better there in longer form writing. I'm able to kind of touch on topics that I really like between art, like about the art and inspiration and creativity, which is really important to me. Also kind of speaking directly to the self-taught artists, because that's where I came from. Obviously now I'm in school, but that's not how I started. The blog is great. And then Instagram, like everyone, I log in more than I should. So I'm there. I just don't produce the content that I am putting into the blog.
So blog, I'm trying to remember. It's kristincronic.com/ blog, or I think there was another word in
Just
there.
go to my website. It'll take you there. KristinCronic.com is like my redirect. So just go there and it's
Okay.
right there. It's easy to
It'll
find.
take you where you need to go.
Yeah.
Okay, well, thank you so much for sharing your amazing insights and your unique perspective and your unique path, and inspiring everybody who's going to love this interview.
Thank you for having me.